taking a while to. There it is. Now we're being recorded. All right. So today we are discussing universal design, and it is topic that's been around for a while, and I think it's interesting to think about how that design works in what we deal with. How does it work with our clients, the contractors we work with, the different needs of people as they grow, and so I wanted to see how any of you have integrated universal design principles into your projects.
Well, I think in general, Tim, one of the things that I've done is on almost all of my plans, I've started incorporating wider hallways, wider doors, just as a matter of course. In higher end product, I mean, obviously, if you're doing starter homes, there's little time and financial appetite for anything that adds cost. But in higher end homes, taking hallways and doors up to a larger size, giving consideration in the design of bathrooms and master bedrooms as well. Just from a stand, usually a master bedroom is big enough that if somebody had to maneuver in a wheelchair, they could potentially, manage without, severely restricting furniture placement and so forth. But I do keep it in mind in that regard, but always looking at in any house, even if it's only the master bath, having a bathroom in the house, which might be, handicap accessible. Not ADA compliant, but handicap accessible. We always look at handicap accessibility, and the first thing we think of is ADA compliance and or somebody in a wheelchair. And I would defy anybody to show me a powder room in a house of any price range that is ADA compliant that they've done, unless it's a hell of a castle or for somebody who's handicapped. Hell, let's face it, by and large, they have a 28-inch door for openers. And, if you took out all the fixtures, you'd have a 5-foot spin. But, ADA compliance aside, if you take, and that was interesting, walked right into the bookcase. Sorry, I was distracted. Squirrel. Jumanji or something there, I don't know. But anyway, handicap accessibility, yeah, that's tricky, man. I can tell you, Steve.
Let's see you try that.
But people can be on a there he goes. People can be, on a cane or on a walker or anything, crutches, whatever it might be. And so, giving thought to a bathroom, if you have a guest in the home, even if you're not looking, at yourself or your client in our case down the road, you don't want to eliminate guests in your home either. I've always thought that, it would be a good thing. I can't say that I've done it, but that it would be a good thing on all homes to provide at least one entrance into the home, whether it's from the garage, the front door, the back door, a mudroom, some entrance into the home, which would accept a wheelchair. We all know the foundation details and whatnot that are required to do that. But, again, not necessarily making the entire house, ADA compliant by any stretch, but being able to accept a guest who is in a wheelchair. And that, knowing full well that someday that might be us or our client.
Well, I think you're talking about two different things, Andy.
How's that?
You're talking about visitability.
Yeah.
And you're talking about aging in place. So,
well,
those
I think they're pretty tightly coupled.
Yeah, exactly. But I hesitate to use the ADA term because that brings in a whole lot of other concerns.
Oh, exactly. As I say,
So
I
really aging in place,
well.
I think. Yeah.
Jim, would you say that aging in place and universal design are interchangeable, or are they two different animals?
I think they're two different marketing terms. I don't know how
Okay.
they differ specifically, but universal design is more is non-age related,
Yeah.
whereas aging in place obviously is for old farts like me. So.
Well, I agree. Terminology makes a difference. You know, rose
Yeah.
by any other name, but from a marketing standpoint, universal design sounds much more pleasant than aging in place.
Yes, well, no doubt.
There's always a sigh at the end of aging in place.
Jim brought up the term visitability. HUD published a whole book on visibility standards, and they did that because a lot of the HUD financed buildings were not ADA compliant, and there's a level that they can use of this visibility standards versus ADA compliance. And it was through HUD. I have a copy of it someplace on my computer, but it's a big issue to know the difference, and don't tell somebody you're going to make their house handicap accessible and have them start to fight with you on, what they need for door clearances and handicap wheelchairs and so on. Just, be
I
careful.
always offered a package, as it were, to design clients that I called handicap friendly. In other words, it's far from being ADA compliant, but that brought into the mix the wider hallways, the wider doors, just the stuff in general that would make it easier, even if somebody had an injury and was on crutches or a walker or whatever for a period of time, and also would accept a guest in similar condition. When you draw the line to wheelchair, that obviously crosses a whole bunch of barriers.
Right. Well, you see, you can, some of the issues with designing things, I mean, you talk about wider hallways. You don't necessarily need a wider hallway. You need, say, to go back to bedrooms, you need to have the clearance to be able to make the turn with the wheelchair.
Sure.
You need narrower casing if you don't have a wider hallway. True.
But you can get most wheelchairs through a 36-inch hallway. It's that 18 inches between the door jamb to the wall, the perpendicular wall, that is a bigger of an issue.
Yeah.
For walkers and wheelchairs. Some of the new bathroom styles, which some people call them wet rooms, where the vanity, the toilet, the tub, shower is all in the same space, so to speak. That it opens up the design concept a lot more for visibility ideas, rather than having to make sure you have a 5-foot turning radius, making sure you have a 4-foot for the toilet, make sure you have, all these other issues, because it's one big room. It just happens to have bath facilities in it. The easiest thing to do is, when you talk to somebody, at least for me, is when I talk to somebody about making that future uses for the what ifs, is, just specify on the drawings, you put blocking in the wall for grab bar applications. You don't need to have 10 foot of blocking in the wall. You just have to have them in the right location for when they do require a grab bar. And those are issues it's easy to accomplish. They throw more wood away than any of the blocking that you're going to have to put in.
Rich shared that he has integrated a number of universal design elements into the plans, and they used to ask more of the clients, but they found that it was uncomfortable for a lot of the clients to discuss. I'm curious, how have you guys gotten past some of the uncomfortability of discussing these design ideas, or have you ran into uncomfortable?
I haven't experienced a lot of it. Most of the clients I've talked to about it were very open about it and interested. in discussing it.
Yeah, I haven't had a problem with that.
Yeah, Tim, usually when I meet, I have a list of questions, kind of like an interview process and some of the final questions I ask is, flush entry from the garage, flush entry from the front porch. Are you worried about, universal design or ADA accessibility? A lot of people don't know what that means, but then I dive a little bit into it. Majority says they're not worried about it, but they do want usually wider halls, wider doors, a large master bath, large master bedroom. So usually in that portion of the house, I typically do almost always somewhat universal design so they can maneuver if need be. Flush entry from the garage is almost, let's say, 75% of the homes now that I do. Some still want flush entry from the entryway. But yeah, I haven't really ran into any issues where they feel offended or anything like that. So just a little interview process is what I do.
Okay. Yeah, it may just depend on the situation or the person as far as them feeling that way.
I think a lot depends on the age of the client as well. When we have clients come in who are, our age or, well, okay, we got a diverse group here, who are in their 50s, let's say, or 60s, and are downsizing to a smaller but, let's say, more luxurious home. They're going to have a lot more interest than a young client who's looking to build a 2-story 4-bedroom home, which kind of throws accessibility in the garbage can right out of the door. Unless you're, if it's a starter home, they probably can't afford to do an elevator from the get-go, and so they're not thinking about it because they're in their 20s or 30s. But a lot of people who do a custom home, which is what most of us do, are a little more advanced in their years and can afford to do things. And this is just another option on the menu to them. If you talk to somebody in their 20s about it, they go, yeah, that's interesting, and let's move along. That they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kind of disagree with you there, Andy. I have many conversations with people, and this is one good thing about sitting down with them in person. A 30-year-old, 35-year-old couple, their parents may be aging, but I start wanting to know about them and their family. You ask certain questions. Well, do you need special accessibility for aging in-laws or aging parents? Do you think sometime they might come to visit with you? Once you get the conversation started, then it can go down a different path.
Sure.
But that only happens by virtually sitting down and sharing experience, and asking questions and asking the right questions. You always hear somebody say, well, an in-law, mom or dad had a fall and they were in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. So what does that mean? They understand what it is. They understand what the need is. You're not going to build a house you're not going to design a house for somebody in their 20s. They haven't got any money. Or if they do, that's be a rare thing. But, as we get into it, the biggest questions is you just got to ask them. You got to open up that conversation and then you see where it leads you.
Okay. Can you share an example of a project where you successfully incorporated some of these principles?
Yeah. I've done some homes for the handicap or the Habitat affiliate. And when they have special needs homes, I usually do that. They, of course, have their standard houses, which we worked on those. But did one house where, it's not only doors, it's also things like light switches and wall outlets. The guy was a quadriplegic and he was in a chair all the time. He couldn't actually reach the light switch. So we put light switches down low for him so that he could get it. Of course, The electrical inspection was a little bit unique. The duplex outlets were up higher off the floor so he could reach them. Did a house for a woman that had a dwarf son that was never going to get more than 30 inches tall. The boy loved to cook, so we made allocations for that. Cabinets were on hinges so that they could fold down. We actually found a miniature toilet so he could get on the toilet without steps. So again, you find these things and you work around it. Did a home for a injured serviceman that lost both of his legs. Well, the only way he could take a shower was on a bed in the shower. And that's a unique situation to have to deal with because you got to get access to it. He's full-time in a chair, but he could get onto basically a bed. It was literally the size of a bed, so he could get into it and lay down. But those are some issues. Handicap accessibility for that same gentleman. Was a house on slab, and they were afraid of tornadoes. So what we did is that the whole house was accessible, but also created a storm shelter, but it needed to be accessible for him and be able to get in there and maneuver around because he was in a chair and not just loaded up to minimum size. So, each one of them are unique. I mean, you ever think about doing a handicap accessible walk-in closet? Not real often, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a couple of homes for people who had degenerative ailments where when the house was designed, maybe they were using a stick or a stick in conjunction with an occasional wheelchair or something, but where they knew that over the course of the next 10 or 15 years, they would go to, ultimately full-time wheelchair and so forth. And, with the full board, we did one for a fellow with it's something called Kennedy's disease. It's what John Kennedy had, but never lived to suffer the slings and arrows of what it does to you completely. But we did that house with front door, back door, and garage access. But from the garage, we didn't do it as a roll-in based on grade condition and everything else. And the fact that even though he was going to be in this condition, he wanted to have a basement. So we did a 3-stop elevator, which sat between in the space between the kitchen and the garage. And it had a stop at the basement, a stop at the garage, and a stop at the first floor. The house was a ranch. And even though the distance between the garage and the first floor was only, some 20 inches or something like that, it was an elevator with a front and back door. So he could roll in from the garage, hit a button, everything closed up. He'd go up, 20 inches and the door would open in front of him and he just continued on into the house. But he also wanted to have access to the finished basement. And, the one handiest thing that's happened in the last 30 years in design is the open plan thing, because it certainly makes it a lot easier to do a design that somebody in a wheelchair can get around in. But I saw him initially, the basement was only roughed in. And then they called me back several years later to have the basement finished. And he had gone from being upright to being in the chair at that point. And was very happy with the home and his ability he wanted to be able to do, he says, I want to do silly, simple things. I want to be able to go out to the mailbox and get my mail without waiting for my wife to come home. And, he could get out of the house, down the driveway, get his mail, come back, get in and out of the house from 3 different places and so forth. But there was a lot of money spent on that house for all the special details. That said, he was an accountant by trade and worked from home, and was able to continue working. We did a nice wheelchair accessible office for him in the house, and he had the builder keep very accurate track of every nail, screw, board, whatever that was involved in anything that, made the house accessible to him, and deducted it from his taxes.
That's impressive.
Question I have, and is just thinking about this. We've been talking about people with accessibility issues, basically physical issues like those, with legs and being in chairs and walkers. Is there a source that would make Braille placards on an as-need basis? If you have somebody that loses their legs, they obviously need a chair. But if they lose their eyes, after a while they'll remember how many doors down the hallway the bedroom is and how many doors down the hallway the bathroom is, but maybe not. But then you have like your kitchen cabinets. It could have a Braille placard that says spices, and another one that would say cereal, and one would say flour, or forks and knives. So is there a place that would make special, or is that something that's not that hard to get?
I am not aware of that.
There are printers that will print Braille.
I bet the 3D printers can do it.
Yeah, I'm sure they can.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a special printer that's available that prints Braille that you can then read. So.
Okay. Of course, you got to know if somebody's putting them in correctly and not upside down or sideways.
I know there's technology available that helps with, even if they're not completely blind, but just they have maybe legally blind or something. But like you can hold, say you had a bottle of medicine, you can hold it up to this like Alexa or something, and it basically can read it out loud, so you know what you've grabbed.
Gotcha.
There's actually an app on most iPhones, I think, that will do that now.
If you're blind, it'd be hard finding the app on your phone to read that.
Fair enough. We're talking low vision, not blind. If you know the app's in the upper right-hand corner, you might find it.
Right.
Yeah, there's probably a combination of technology and the printing out of the Braille stuff that's available there. So I would imagine there's all kinds of things available. It's just finding it.
Yeah, sourcing things is often the biggest problem.
Yeah, for special things, yeah, because you're getting into items that aren't normally found, and so you're usually going to either a store or a trade that you're not used to working with, and so it's a whole new learning experience, which is great, so that you at least have now a source for any future projects. I've got a project where it's a multi-generational house, and no one's in any kind of wheelchair or anything of that sort. The parents are getting older. They have an aunt that's 85, still up and moving, but stairs are not her friend. So they're wanting to integrate an elevator and have the same things. So it stops at the garage, then it goes up to the first floor, doors on both sides. At some point she might be in a chair or walker, but it doesn't look like anybody's thinking that will ever happen. So there's a lot of those. The concept, at least on the parents' side, is thinking, okay, let's make it as accessible as possible, just so that we're thinking ahead in the future. So they do have a zero threshold going in from the garage to the house, so that it makes it easier for them to at least get in. And if something were to happen, it's already set up. So at least they're forward thinking on that, but it's not trying to address anything that's currently happening. It's more of just what might happen. So I think that's an interesting way to kind of look at it too.
honestly, Tim, one of the ways that I used to discuss this with people is, if you have a circumstance like that, by putting things like a zero-step entry into the house and so forth, you are potentially preventing these things from happening. Because somebody falling, trying to get up the stairs from the garage into the house or whatever, that's where the fall that breaks a hip happens. Or having low step over or zero step showers when you're not trying to get a wheelchair in the shower, you just don't want to fall. When you get somebody who's 85, 90 years old and still upright and taking showers, eliminating tripping hazards is an incredibly valuable thing. Prevent the injury from happening in the first place.
Yeah, and another, I guess, practical thing that I've thought of in designs, and this has just come from helping friends move, is the fact that it's just easier to move things in through larger doorways. So when I'm talking with clients who aren't even thinking about accessibility issues, they're just thinking, hey, I can explain, like, look, if you have larger doors, it's just going to make it a lot easier to get things in and out. But it also then makes it easier for designing, for having, if there is an accessibility issue, it's already set up that way. And that seems to be a way that for at least the younger clients to go, oh, that makes sense. And then their house actually becomes, that's another segment of the population. They go to resell the house. Now they've got at least wider doorways and things of that sort. So the house automatically kind of falls into at least a little more accessible to that market side of things.
Anything you can do to make your house appeal to a larger base is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Have there been any challenges that you guys have faced in designing for accessibility and inclusiveness?
Inclusivity.
Yes.
Yeah, I've faced quite a few over the years. I've done a lot of elevators for people. I did a house that was a semi-custom house remodel, where the current owners, I don't know whether he was injured after they owned the house or they bought the house and needed to, I don't remember at this point, it's been too many years, but we retrofitted an elevator into what was the dining room and what became the loft on the second, or what was a loft on the second floor, so they could get from the first floor to the second floor. Of course, the lower level was easy to do, but that gave them a 3-stop elevator, but it destroyed a couple of rooms in the process for normal use. The dining room became, well, it was a corner of a dining space that was in an open plan, so it wasn't horrible, but it eliminated the use as a dining room. It became more of a study area then. Yeah, that was a big challenge structurally. I try to have conversations with people when they indicate their concern. Most of the clients I work with that come in indicate that, hey, I'm concerned about mobility issues in 5 years, or I've got MS and I know that eventually I'm going to need this, or, but they don't want to spend that $35,000-$40,000 to put that elevator in now. So we'll stack closets and provide the depression in the basement floor that gets framed over, so that they have the ability to add that when the need arises. It is a challenge sometimes to stack those things, but no more so than stacking a staircase. So you just work around it. I've also done 1 or 2 projects where people had children who were not only physically but mentally handicapped, both special needs and physical. And we've done, I did a room addition for, they had a son who was becoming a teenager and growing, and they could no longer lift him and move him from his bed to the bathroom. So we designed this addition, and it had tracks in the ceiling so that they could put him in a harness and lift him and move him into the bathroom for bathing and for toilet purposes. So it was, it's humbling you're just very thankful you don't have to deal with that when you witness that, and try to design it for somebody who's struggling to deal with those kinds of issues. So it's an important part of what we do, I think.
Yeah, I like that. It is humbling. I've got a project right now where there's some tornadoes not too long ago from near their house, and the son is getting into teenage years. They can't really lift him anymore. He's in a wheelchair, and it's a pretty heavy duty wheelchair, and they really had no way to get him down into the basement. And thankfully, nothing happened to their house. But they're looking to put in an elevator. It will similar. It's going to take out part of a space of a room, but in the end, it'll alleviate an anxiety that when a storm comes, they know that they can get their son to safety. And doing something like that where you can design something helps out solve a problem for them. That's a pretty cool piece to what we do to be able to make people's lives better.
Yeah. We had a Keith Sherrick. I don't know if you know who that is, but he used to be Eastway Supply. But he put on a seminar for, I forget which group it was, but he talked about bathroom accessibility, and he stressed the term differently abled, not disabled. And at the end of the thing, he talked about his sister was differently abled. And that's why he was so adamant about teaching this, and how important it was to not view these people as disabled, but differently abled. And, one of the things he stressed were the zero threshold showers and having the handheld there next to the seat so that somebody who was differently abled could sit in the shower and wash themselves, and not to have somebody else wash them, which is very dehumanizing, I think. So, so somebody who has complete mental facilities but has some physical problems, that's an important thing to think about. Not only that, the handheld's great for washing that big shower down when you're cleaning it. So twofold use.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it is humbling when you get an opportunity to be able to design something that ultimately is going to help somebody else out, and improve their situation, whether it's an addition project, or a new custom house. In the end, they're going to end up with a better quality of life. And that's, it's amazing to be able to have that opportunity, that you're designing and then taking on this challenge, and trying to think through all the different possibilities of what could happen down the road, to how you can make sure, like Andy, you were talking about your client that was in one state when you first started, and then when you went back, like he was already in a chair, but you saw that your design worked for him. And so like that, there's a great satisfaction, like it actually worked the way it was supposed to.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I think to have that opportunity is really cool. And it's definitely a design concept that I know when I first heard it, I was kind of like, okay, we'll see how this is going to go. I would say as I've gotten older and have had more experience going through different houses and working with different clients, I've realized it definitely is something that makes a lot more sense for the population in general. And it's part of just educating our clients to think a little bit differently, to make the house more usable for what it could be, while also trying to maintain a house design that works within their budget, which is always a challenge with any of this stuff, because elevators are definitely not cheap. And so some of those things that can be a little more expensive, it's like, okay, what can we do that maybe is less expensive, or simple changes, but they just make it that much more accessible. And again, some things are easier than others. You know, if you're dealing with remodel or addition projects, you're a little more limited than you would be obviously designing something from scratch. But thinking that way, I think is beneficial for our clients, that we're giving them a house that not only meets their needs now, but it down the road. Especially if, you know, I've run into a number of clients where they're young enough, but they're thinking about, well, what if mom or dad needs to move in? And that's, even though it's could be still 10 years plus down the road, they're thinking we need to at least have a space that works for one of our parents to come in. And if even if they're not thinking that, I think it's a good thing to just kind of bring up, like, however it could come up, it's just something to design in there that just makes it to where if they needed to offer that, we had the forethought to be able to say, this is something you should consider, even if they're not thinking, because most time clients are so paralyzed by the number of decisions they have to make, that it is helpful to do stuff like, you know, what Keith, what you're doing is some sort of interview process with them, or questions to be able to ask them, and just what can we do to help our guide our clients to a better design overall to meet what they currently are dealing with, and also things that they're probably not thinking of, because they don't know what they don't know.
Well, we're in a position to some extent, I don't know how to put this, change standards. You know, an awful lot happens in the construction industry, especially in residential, because that's how we do it. And, you know, it's like, you know, why not put 0 entry showers in whenever you put in a shower? Why have a step over? You know, technology exists. There's a lot of wonderful products now, you know, to make that not an issue. And no, you're not going to get water all over the bathroom floor and so forth and so on. Why not have at least 1 0 entrance on every home? Is there anybody here who just, you know, loves the idea of stepping up 2 steps to get into a house? You know, it's like, it's just, I mean, there are reasons for it, obviously, you know, a flat top foundation, the thickness of a subfloor, you know, whatever. There are some details required, but the more commonly they become used, the less expensive they are. And, you know, again, you know, when you're carrying groceries in from the garage, you know, do you really want to have to step up 2 steps, or is it just that that's how it is? It's not a horrifically expensive thing to eliminate a lot of these barriers in a home that even perfectly healthy, active, younger people, you know, could enjoy, just from a standpoint of they're nicer, they're, you know, whatever. Why not do this?
Mm-hmm.
And the only barrier I see really is the cost one. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't have to be much money.
Well, Andy, you're right. We can say that all we want. And there's systems out there to make flush showers, water resistant, waterproof. We can do all these things, and then we run into the contractor that comes out and says, I'm not going to warranty it. I don't have a curb. Okay.
The contractor is our biggest enemy in anything that is a change from what we're doing now.
Yeah. You know, the cost of a 3-foot door to a 2.8 door is only a couple of dollars.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's just, you know, the contractors can sometimes, there's great contractors out there, don't get me wrong, but there's contractors out there that will sabotage anything you try to do for the home.
Yes, there are.
I think that's where we, along with our clients, you know, especially if the clients bought into having something like that with the shower or whatever it is that we've designed that's trying to make it more accessible. If the contractor's pushing back, maybe it's like, you know what, client, I think you might want to look at bidding this out to some other contractors.
That's hard to do when the contractors are the
Who's
ones
brought you the client?
Hold on. What was that, Jim?
I said it's hard to do when it's a contractor that brought you to the job.
Well, that's true. That's a whole different conversation there.
Yes.
But it represents a large part of the work we do, brought to us by a contractor we work with regularly.
Yes. That's where you hopefully can have a different conversation with them away from the client and go, why? Let's talk about this.
I have that conversation all the time. Insulation below a basement slab. Do you know how much that costs? Do you know how much the concrete guys hate doing that? It's like, do you know how much more comfortable it makes the house for $2,000 or $3,000? Well, I can't include that because that makes me more expensive than my competition and I'll lose the job. Blah, 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 blah. Wah, wah, wah. I get tired of hearing it. You don't want to set yourself apart and be a step above your competition. But, I can't. I have to zip my lip and shut up and try to go along, But there are some builders I recommend to people when they ask because they are thinking people.
Yeah. No, I've had those types of problems with contractors for years, just dealing with the high performance homes type construction. They don't want to hear it. They don't care.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
curious,
Why
are you
would
talking
we
about a
wanna do
walkout basement, Jim? Or
Say it again,
Jim,
Keith.
I said, I'm just curious, are you talking about a walkout basement insulating? Or are you talking about just a normal basement?
Talking about normal basement. It's energy savings. The
Insulating under the
slab now
concrete?
is room temperature instead of 54 degrees.
Gotcha.
And now you put a carpet on it, it's a place the kids want to play. Not a
You doing
floor anymore.
you doing like the 2-foot insulation or the whole slab?
No, whole slab, 2 inches of foam underneath the whole slab.
Okay. I've never done that, but
It's the other thing, the other way to do it, I've seen this on the build show multiple times. They use closed cell spray foam, put 2 inches of it down, and then nobody has a problem walking on it. And, it's the vapor barrier and everything all in one. But that's more expensive because it's closed cell spray foam. So, but the Dow board, the guys complain they have to walk on it. It's, make sure it's squared up and
Tape the joints.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Spend the time to tape the joints. It's not that much work. I get tired of hearing I can't do it.
It is tough, and I've had my fair share of battles with builders over the years of you do something a little bit different and they're just like, whoa, that is not what I'm used to, and you feel like you designed something upside down or whatever because it's different. And sometimes it's like, no, I just use the same components but put them together in a way that you haven't seen before.
If it's not the way my grandfather did it, then it's wrong.
I had a custom builder who's known for building quality homes tell me to take the rebar out of my porch, front porch stoop slab and the rear porch slab because it's not needed. I've never used it and I've never had a problem. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. It's your callback. So
Right.
I've never had a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Some battles are not worth trying to win.
No, it's not. But it irritates me when I'm addressed like I'm an idiot because I put it in there. That's what really frustrates me.
Well,
Yes.
Well, we
Best
could have
practice,
this.
what the engineer suggested.
We could go down this path of conversation for hours.
It involves a beer.
It does. It involves a lot of beer, and then we go down for a couple more hours.
Well, see, in June 1st when we meet, we can do that.
Yes, we could do that.
Go back to Carolina or wherever and be able to sit down and have a sarsaparilla and share horror stories.
We can do that.
Jim, that's a great transition for us to kind of end this topic. And Mike, if you could explain June 1st, what we are doing.
June 1st is a joint meeting and home tour to a place called the Patterson McMillan House. The Patterson McMillan House was built by John Patterson. He was the owner of and founder of National Cash Register. It's a 43-room, 5-bay European chalet-style house. I think it's he built it in 1924 for $450,000.
Wow.
In the meantime, the house has been taken over by a church, but they offer tours, and the meeting will be at 11 o'clock, and then afterwards we'll go elsewhere. The house was also owned by John McMillan. After Patterson sold it, he sold it to John McMillan, which was the founder of Dayton Tire and Rubber Company in 1940. So the house has a lot of historical owners, which is pretty amazing. But right now, like I said, it's now a church, it's a Lutheran Church of Our Savior, and they offer it. They open it up to tours on special occasion. And Matt Jones got it approved, so we can go through it.
Awesome. And that's 11 o'clock, right?
June 1st, 11 o'clock. And then afterwards, we'll go to a restaurant someplace and have lunch and carry these conversations on some more.
Sounds good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in a couple weeks, and appreciate everyone's input today. And with that, we'll conclude our meeting today, and we'll talk soon. Jim, go ahead. I was just saying I was going to send you some dates we could potentially meet.
Okay. All right. I just, for those that missed Saturday's tour, it was awesome. We had a really nice tour of the, I can't remember the name, Mike, but
Long Remspert.
Yeah, it was a very interesting house that had been remade in the early 1900s from the original house built in the 1860s, and it was interesting to see how that happened and the transitions and so on and so forth. It was just an interesting tour for a house that's seldom open.
Yeah, they're working on the actual house museum that tracks the history of all of the houses that were done and developed in the city of Oakwood. The interesting part about that, which those didn't talk about, is that the owner of the house, he did talk about how he had a brickyard and a gravel pit, and he had the only brickyard and gravel pit in the area. And he paved a section of Far Hills Avenue because it was in front of his house. But because everybody kept using it, he put a toll gate on it. So it kind of helped pay for his house, pay for the idea. And then the city got together and they decided to make it a paved road. And he also made some money off of that one. But it was an interesting place, and it didn't take a lot of pictures. I guess I was kind of overwhelmed with the way the house was and some of the things in it, but it didn't take a lot of pictures. So anyway, that's it. Thank you all. And again, the Dayton Regional is having the joint conference meeting with the building code officials on May 22nd. That meeting starts at 9 a.m. It'll be on virtual as well as in person. There's a few people coming. It should be an interesting meeting. So join in virtually or in person.
Yes, Jim.
One last thing I'd like to mention. Ted Hake is our incoming national president this year. It would be nice for us to have a show of force at the national convention in San Antonio to support him for that. He's done an awful lot for the association over the last 25 years, and he deserves this honor that he's receiving. And while it's an honor, it's also a lot of work. So
Yes,
I just want to suggest that some of us think about attending this year if we can. If you haven't been before, it is a good time. You learn a lot. You write it off. You take the family, whatever. I travel with my family to a lot of these conventions, and we went places we would probably never have gone as a family otherwise, and wrote off a lot of the expenses. So it's a nice vacation, and it's San Antonio promises to be warm in late July, early August. But the river walk's pretty nice, I'm told, and nighttime is when the activities happen. So if you're bringing a family, bring a sitter too, so you can go out.
Well, Jim, when I first joined and you're trying to get everybody to go to the national conventions, you had said at that time that once you go to your first one, you will want to go every year after that. And you are absolutely right. I think I've only missed a couple since I joined in 95. And it's probably, my wife calls it my summer camp.
Yeah. Well, it has been for a lot of us.
Yes.
But I'll say what I've said ever since I attended my first one. I get more out of sitting in the bar or sitting in a restaurant and chatting with people from all over the country that do what we do, that I can implement in my business than I get out of the damn seminars. I mean, I learned stuff from the seminars, but the restaurant or the bar is where you get to sit there and say, I'm having an issue with this. How do you deal with it? And you can talk to somebody who's, if you've got 4 people, he's got 8, or she's got 8, or whatever. And people are extremely willing to share how they've solved problems, or, we're in it too. And you put your heads together to see if you come up with, that is so important to me, and it has been for years and years. I just thoroughly enjoy that part of it, being able to sit down and chat with folks about mutual problems and solutions.
Right.
And I think that pays for itself.
Sounds good.
So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but
Say, just earmark the money to go and go. That's only I would say. Go for it.
Spend it like you got it.
Well, if I don't got it, I don't go. But I got it. So I'm going.
Your clients can wait. We're all busy. The clients can wait. Just wow.
I'm going.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
You got to have some time to recharge.
Yes. All right. Well, it's been good. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll hopefully see everyone here in a couple weeks.
Sounds
Forward
good.
to it.
All right. See ya.